So Nobody 2 is the sequel to the first film of Nobody, in which Bob Odenkirk plays Hutch Mansell, a man who tries to stand up for himself and basically fight back against those he despises. Now, the first film, I really loved with its grit. I felt like it got a little bit lost in how it tried to in how it kind of like tried to like highlight the masculinity and the insecurity that Hutch has to like build himself up. And I felt like, that film, it started off with like a decent idea with it, and then by the end it just kind of like fell into, John Wick style action, which isn't a surprise, that this film was conspired, by some of the people who worked on John Wick. So it's very much, like it starts off with a decent idea and then just falls into the action and the absurdity of it all. And Nobody 2 is very much more of that, except it feels like very much like a vacation. Like if Nobody was a TV series, this would be like the holiday special. This would be the one where Hutch just goes on vacation with his family, and he still does all the cool stuff you expect, where he, beats up people, takes down assassins, and does so with just this gritty vibe to him. It's like, it's very much more the same, but just more sillier, and just like, and all the other aspects, like, focusing on masculinity, takes like a little bit of a backseat. There's, like I said, it feels a little bit like a watered down version, a little bit of what Nobody was. And then for Nobody 2, it feels like it sets up decent ideas and then just kind of forgets them and realizes, look, you probably don't care about this. You probably just want to see like the big cool sequence here where Bob Odenkirk and RZA and Christopher Lloyd are all running around a water park, beating up and destroying assassins. And yeah, it does get to that point. But I do appreciate that the film does try to give a little bit more characterization to Hutch, because I like the fact that how, Hutch, it seems like he's kind of gotten his life back together after the first film, where he stood up for himself, or he has power again. And this film starts off with again like another rut that Hutch has stuck himself within, but this one feels like one more of his own making, as opposed to one that he doesn't have control over. Because yeah, Hutch still has his business of beating people up. In fact, now he has to obliterate several people in order to acquire more money to make up for all the cash that he burned in the previous film. And he does a pretty efficient job at it. He does it well, but he's also being more disconnected from his family. So Becca, played by Connie Nielsen, is just feeling more and more distant from her husband. She's sort of drinking more. His son is becoming more aggressive. He's getting into fights, and his daughter is just fine, but I guess like the film doesn't really have time for her, but like it does really feel like he needs to be present more for his wife, and for his son, especially since his son is getting into more fights and can't quite control his anger, which is something that Hutch kind of recognizes and wants to try to deal with. And the key word here is try, because that's the big setup here. But like the key takeaway from all this is basically that Hutch needs to spend more time with his family, and he needs to be more connected. And that's where the film is leading towards. So Hutch gets the great idea. It's like, hey, why don't we go to this old water park? I went to it as a kid. It'd be great. We can go there. We can hang out. We can be a family. And there's some decent moments between him and his family that feel believable. You look at Bob Odenkirk and you don't immediately see an action hero. But of course, once we get a little bit more into the film, we've got to have like some action. And it does arrive when just, someone, looks at Hutch the wrong way, and, and someone pisses off his family, and before he knows it, he's punching people out again, and before he knows it, he's, angered some mafia people, and he's once again having to kill a bunch of people in order to ensure the safety of his family. And there's not too much more to the film than that. Like, I think the best way to look at the film is to appreciate the performance of Sharon Stone, who plays the antagonist of Lendina, who is this kind of like masterminding bootlegger she's just like, she's cartoonish levels of villain here. She walks around with, like a stylish look, slick back hair, fancy glasses, holding a dog the whole time. And just, her dialogue in this film, it's not good. It's pretty like bad villain stuff. But Sharon Stone is just making a meal out of these lines. I think she recognized, like, look, these aren't the best lines, but I'm just here, to service an antagonist for the action. I'm not going to have too much to do until Bob Odenkirk obliterates a bunch of people. So I might as well just have fun with this. I might as well just try to eat every line I can whole and just play it up as maniacally as I can. And she does a pretty good job at it. And I think that very much defines Nobody 2, because look, if you're coming into this film expecting some more character growth from Hutch, you're not going to get it much here. If you're expecting, his father, played by Christopher Lloyd, to have a little bit more reflection on the boy that he raised, not a lot here. And if you're expecting anything more from RZA as Hutch's adopted younger brother to do anything more than just show up with a sword and cut people up, yeah, you're going to be disappointed. But if you came into the film just to watch Hutch beat people up, RZA cut people up with a sword, and Christopher Lloyd mow people down with a machine gun, that's what you're going to get. And I do like the fact that the film leans into that hard. Like, by the third act, they realize, like, look, we're not really going to address much of the arcs or the concerns that, Hutch and his family have. So we're just kind of going to resolve them as quickly as we can here so that we can get to the big scene. We're at this carnival and this water park. There's all this carnage and bloodshed and explosion and violence. And on that level, it's pretty fun. And at that point, yeah, the film has accepted it. Yeah, like, this is just, Hutch's wild Wisconsin vacation where he obliterates a bunch of people. And there's some decent performances here, but mostly everybody stays in their lane here. Like, you have John Oritz playing this corrupt theme park operator who eventually works with Hutch, but there's not much more to his character other than that he gets drunk a little bit. He's on the take, and he makes a few remarks against, like, the white people he despises. Not a whole lot for him to do, but I feel like he's trying to do something with this role here. Same goes for, like, Colin Hanks as the very as a sheriff with a very bad haircut, who he's going to be the first one murdered once Sharon Stone's character has just had enough of him. And he plays his role fairly well as this kind of, minion who thinks that he's in a little bit more control when really he isn't. And he learns that the hard way when, of course, Hutch comes knocking. So at that rate, there isn't too much more to talk about in the film besides, like, the cool action sequences here, which, I mean, there's explosive mines in ball pits. There's a water slide where there's a spike trap in it. There's guns hidden everywhere. Like I said, there's machine guns used by Christopher Lloyd. It's just so much carnage and bloodshed and action, and it's very mindless, but I think it works to the benefit of the film that it leans in to the absurdity of it all. And I think you really have to, because otherwise, you're just gonna, if you start questioning this plot even for a moment, it immediately falls apart. Like, case in point, there's a scene towards the end of the film where two of Lindina's women assassins are, there's not much said about them at all. Like, they're completely silent. They're by her side at all times. And when we get to the big climax, of course, both of them are going to come after Hutch. And it's a pretty decent fight sequence, but at one point, one of them is murdered and the other screams no, like, tragically. And it just makes you wonder, like, wait, who got killed? Like, because I don't even think we learned their names. Like, who got killed here? And wait, who is yelling no? And why? Why should we care more about that we can feel that emotion? I mean, I guess we got to feel something by the end, but there isn't, like, it felt like there was, like, a whole batch of scenes with those characters that we didn't get to see. And I'm not asking for much here. I mean, this is a pretty ridiculous film where at one point a fish tries to eat Bob Odenkirk's finger, and there's a ridiculous fight on a boat here where all the tourists take no notice of them. It's just it's leaning into the violence and the absurdity, and Bob Odenkirk is really fun in a lot of these scenes, especially the sequence where very early in the film where he beats up a bunch of people with arcade equipment. So if you like seeing Bob Odenkirk beat people up, you'll love this film. And if you love seeing RZA cut people open with swords and Christopher Lloyd with guns and Sharon Stone hamming it up as much as possible, the film gets it done. It doesn't do much more than that. And in fact, it does a little bit. It has, like, a lesser thematic focus than the first Nobody film, but for what it is, for just being, like, a very mindless, ridiculous, absurd action comedy film, it gets the job done. It's pretty fun. It's one of those films where you just kind of have to go into it realizing that they're gonna not, like, completely shut your brain out, but realize they're probably not going to develop these arcs anymore past just simple platitudes before they can get to the cool action scenes. And they're fun. They're charming. They're brutal. They're bizarre, and they get the job done. So yeah, Nobody 2 is another fun action outing for Bob Odenkirk.